New footage of Kyler Murray and J.J. McCarthy getting into it at Vikings training camp is going viral. Fans are convinced there's real tension between the two quarterbacks as they battle for the starting job. So what really happened? Let's break it down. It started at OTAs. Cameras were rolling, reporters had their recorders out, and both Minnesota Vikings quarterbacks were asked back-to-back about the exact same thing. What's your relationship like with the guy standing across the practice field from you, fighting you for your job? Both quarterbacks were asked about their relationship during OTAs on May 27, and their answers couldn't have been more different. That single fact is the whole story in one sentence. Same question, same day, same building. Two completely different men showed up on camera. Kyler Murray went first, or at least his version hit differently. He talked about being the older guy, about wanting to be useful to the kid across the room. He said something to the effect that he knew McCarthy was younger, so any way he could help him, he'd give him whatever knowledge the guy needed. He outlined how he was willing to help McCarthy any way he could, saying, "Obviously, I know he's a younger guy, so any way I can help him, obviously I'll give him any knowledge that he needs." He added that they were both competitors, and they both wanted what was best for the team. Then it was McCarthy's turn, and this is the part of the footage that made the internet stop scrolling. He didn't say anything about wanting to help anybody. He didn't say anything warm at all. Instead, he compared his relationship with Murray to two strangers sitting on opposite sides of a classroom. He described his relationship with Murray this way: "It's just like two guys in a classroom. He sits on one side, and I sit on the other side, and it's the coach's responsibility to teach us and coach us." His comments certainly had a more tense air to them as they pertain to his relationship with Murray, and not just the nature of the competition. Read that back: two guys in a classroom. Not teammates, not competitors pushing each other to get better. Strangers, assigned seats, no relationship at all beyond geography. The clip hit social media within hours, and it wasn't just football writers who noticed the tone. McCarthy's response in particular drew widespread criticism from fans and analysts, who found it dismissive and immature for a quarterback fighting to keep his job. Here's why that detail matters so much. This isn't some journeyman backup mouthing off in a media scrum. Nobody's watching. After signing two-time Pro Bowler Kyler Murray to a one-year, $1.3 million deal in March, the franchise made clear that McCarthy's grip on the starting job was anything but secure. McCarthy is the guy on the hot seat. He's the one who's supposed to be smoothing things over, playing nice, saying the safe thing. Instead, on camera, in front of every reporter in the building, he basically told the world he doesn't have a relationship with the man trying to take his job. And it wasn't just one throwaway line either. When reporters pushed him on it later, asking if there was any awkwardness between him and Murray, McCarthy doubled down instead of walking it back. McCarthy denied any awkwardness in a response to a follow-up question, saying, "Awkwardness. It's just like the same feeling when you're in high school, and there's another person on the other side of the room. That's just kind of how it is. I wouldn't say there's any awkwardness. High school." That's the second time he reached for a classroom metaphor to describe his relationship with the man he's fighting for his career against. Two separate press conferences. Two separate comparisons to sitting in a room with a stranger. That's not a slip of the tongue. That's a pattern. And the split-screen effect only got worse once people went back and pulled Murray's actual words next to it. This was in stark contrast to a description offered by Murray, who outlined how he was willing to help McCarthy any way he could, saying he knew McCarthy was a younger guy and would give him any knowledge he needed. "We're both competitors, and I know we both want what's best for the team," Murray said. But then it was Murray's turn for some awkwardness, because here's the twist nobody saw coming. A few weeks later, at minicamp, the tables flipped. Reporters asked Murray about adjusting to a brand new offense, and he gave an answer that had its own edge to it. He had a rather blunt answer when he was asked what the toughest part about adjusting to the new offense was. "Having to split reps with JJ. Me already being behind. Not getting the amount of reps you would typically want a guy to get learning the offense. That's probably the toughest part," Murray told reporters. Think about what he's actually saying there. He's telling reporters on camera that sharing snaps with McCarthy is hurting his ability to learn the playbook. That's not a compliment. That's a complaint. Dressed up in a suit and tie, it was the most diplomatic way he could transmit to the team it needs to commit to him over McCarthy, at least for the year, lest it risk an inconsistent QB1A and QB1B situation. So now you've got footage of McCarthy calling Murray a stranger in a classroom, and footage of Murray telling the media that splitting reps with McCarthy is actively holding him back. Two grown men competing for one job, and neither one hiding how they actually feel about sharing it. This is the part where you'd expect the story to cool off. It didn't. Once those two clips got cut together and started circulating, the entire NFL commentary world jumped in. And that's when things got genuinely heated, not just between the quarterbacks, but around them. Once that footage made the rounds, it wasn't just fans in the replies anymore. Actual media figures, former players, and league insiders started weighing in, and a lot of them didn't hold back. One of the sharper reactions came from a voice who put it about as bluntly as possible. "They hate each other," Lindsay wrote on X about Murray and McCarthy. 2 words, no nuance, just a flat declaration that summed up exactly what half the internet was already thinking. After watching those 2 clips back to back, others went after McCarthy specifically. "Kyler Murray is so much more mature than JJ McCarthy," Patrick Seatman said on X. "McCarthy still feels like a child when talking to the media." That's not a football criticism. That's a character read, coming directly off the back of that classroom comment. And then there was the crowd who leaned into the drama instead of condemning it. I know there's a section of fans and ownership that just wants everybody to be friends. But I personally like the fact the Vikings have created pissed-off JJ McCarthy and want to see where this goes. Chris Shad wrote, speculating about the Vikings trying a unique way to get the best out of the third-year quarterback. Basically arguing the front office might actually want McCarthy irritated, that an edge, even an ugly one, might be exactly what gets him playing better football. Then came the sarcasm. "Just a couple of great teammates getting along," Sam Monson said in a sarcastic tone. About Murray and McCarthy. One line, dripping with the exact energy everyone felt watching that footage split screen together. But it wasn't universal pile-on. There was pushback too, and it came from somebody who actually knows what it's like to sit in a Minnesota quarterback room. Ben Lieber, a former Vikings linebacker who now works in Minnesota sports radio, went on air and basically told everybody to calm down. Lieber doesn't understand why everyone is so upset, saying, "I don't truly understand what the issue is here, because I've seen all the fodder on social media. I think one gave a political answer and one gave an honest answer. And so everybody's like, one's way more mature than the other." I'm like, what do you mean? He kept pushing that angle too. He asked what people actually want out of athletes, honesty or the political answer, and argued that if McCarthy had given an answer similar to Murray's, taking the high road with a political answer, he would have gotten destroyed for that instead. Lieber said there's a big part of the fan base that just wants to nitpick everything McCarthy says, and does in a negative direction. That take got its own pushback, and this is where it stopped being a debate about media training and turned into something sharper. A former NFL quarterback named Ben DiNucci, who bounced around 5 different rosters over 5 seasons, went straight after McCarthy on social media. He didn't cushion it. "JJ, this is the NFL, brother. This type of attitude doesn't fly at the QB position. You have too many people watching how you act." Now, DiNucci wasn't some Hall of Fame arm-dropping wisdom from a mountain. He played for 5 seasons on 5 teams and survived in this league largely because coaches didn't need to worry about him being a distraction as a backup. But that's actually what made the call-out sting more, not less. This was a guy who knew exactly how thin the margins are for a quarterback, who isn't a lock to start. He wasn't scolding a franchise player who can say whatever he wants, because the roster is built around him. He was warning a guy on the roster bubble that attitude like that gets you cut, not extended. And the piling on didn't come from nowhere. Writers who'd actually sat through both interviews back to back made the exact same observation independently, without even needing to replay the clip. Vikings fans already knew exactly what McCarthy had said about his relationship with Murray. It was more than just the words themselves, it was how starkly different they were from Murray's answer about him. One writer even acknowledged the obvious defense before shutting it down. Everyone slips up sometimes talking to the media, and this is a 23-year-old who lives under a microscope, embroiled in high expectations since the day he arrived in Minnesota. But that context didn't stop the call-outs. Some analysis tried to be fair to both sides of the argument, acknowledging McCarthy had a point buried under bad delivery. One columnist admitted McCarthy probably could have avoided sparking a news cycle with a basic PR answer about being excited to compete and wanting what's best for the team, but argued nobody should be surprised he's frustrated. He was drafted 10th overall 2 years ago, made 10 NFL starts, and is now staring down the very real possibility of losing his starting job entirely. The same piece conceded McCarthy could have worded things better, but he didn't actually bash Murray or the franchise. He was simply honest about how he felt, and reporters usually criticize athletes for the opposite problem, ripping him apart for finally being candid. The argument seemed a little unfair, even while understanding exactly where the criticism was coming from. And that's the split that's defined this entire story since the footage dropped. One camp says McCarthy just got caught being honest in a league that punishes honesty. The other camp says a guy fighting for his career should know better than to hand ammunition to a locker room and a fan base already looking for reasons to give up on him. Either way, the noise didn't die down. If anything, it forced everyone to go back and ask a bigger question. How did these two men end up standing across from each other in the same quarterback room in the first place? To understand why that classroom comment landed like a grenade, you have to understand exactly what each of these guys was risking by saying it. Start with Murray. This wasn't a backup or a project quarterback walking into Minnesota. Murray joined the Vikings after spending 7 seasons as Arizona's starter. The 2019 #1 overall pick won Offensive Rookie of the Year and made Pro Bowls after the 2020 and 2021 seasons, though he endured multiple changes during his time with the Cardinals. This is a guy who had been the unquestioned face of a franchise, the starter, the highest paid player in the building. Up until this point of his professional career, Murray had been the guy, the starter, the face of the franchise, the highest paid player on the team. And then in the span of one offseason, all of that changed. The Cardinals moved on from him, and Minnesota scooped him up on a prove-it deal. The Vikings signed Murray to a 1-year contract in March after he was released by the Arizona Cardinals. That's not a max extension. That's a 1-year prove-yourself-again contract for a guy who'd been a Pro Bowler. For the first time in his adult football life, Murray had to walk into a building and actually compete for a job instead of assuming it was his. For the first time, Murray found himself in a different territory, having to compete with McCarthy for the opportunity to be the Vikings' starting quarterback. And he acknowledged that splitting reps as part of the competition had been the toughest part, as he learned a new offense for the first time in 4 years. Now flip it around to McCarthy, because his side of this is arguably even more pressurized. McCarthy had led the Michigan Wolverines to a national championship the season before entering the draft, throwing for 2,991 yards with 22 touchdowns and 4 interceptions in 2023. Minnesota took him 10th overall, betting on him as their long-term answer. Then his rookie year basically didn't happen. McCarthy tore the meniscus in his right knee in the Vikings preseason opener against the Las Vegas Raiders in 2024, underwent surgery, and was ruled out for the entirety of that campaign. He didn't take a single regular season snap as a rookie. So 2025 was supposed to be his real debut. It did not go the way Minnesota hoped. McCarthy's second NFL season was defined by inconsistency and injury. He missed 7 games due to an ankle injury, a concussion, and a hand issue, and struggled badly when he was actually on the field. The numbers back that up in a brutal way. He was arguably the worst quarterback in the league that year, posting the lowest completion percentage, 57.6%, and the worst passer rating, 72.6, among qualified quarterbacks. Put those two numbers next to each other, and you understand why Minnesota went out and signed a 2-time Pro Bowler in March, instead of just handing McCarthy the job back. In response to that season, the team signed Murray to a 1-year deal, so it could quietly move on from the McCarthy era, after having selected him 10th overall in the 2024 draft class. That's about as blunt a vote of no confidence as a front office can give a young quarterback, without actually cutting him. Even his final career line from that lost season tells the story of a talent still trying to find its footing. McCarthy arrived at camp trying to separate his current game from the quarterback who struggled through 2025. His 10 career starts had produced 1,632 passing yards, 11 touchdowns and 12 interceptions, plus 181 rushing yards and 4 scores. All career highs simply because his rookie season ended before it began. So when McCarthy stood in front of cameras and compared his relationship with Murray to 2 strangers in a classroom, that wasn't just an awkward soundbite. That was a guy who got benched by circumstance as a rookie, got humbled by his own stat line as a sophomore, and then watched his franchise go out and pay a former Pro Bowler to come take his seat. Of course, there was tension in that answer. The tension was earned, on paper, by 2 full seasons of results, and Murray's side carries its own weight too. He didn't leave Arizona on his own terms. He got released. He was released by the Arizona Cardinals after 7 years of being the guy there, and landed in Minnesota needing to prove, at close to 30, that he could still be a starting caliber NFL quarterback. A prove-it deal after that kind of resume isn't a soft landing. It's a referendum. That's the backdrop the footage landed on top of two guys who both had legitimate reasons to be tense, both trying not to look tense on camera, and both failing at exactly the same moment in exactly the same news cycle. The reason this story kept growing wasn't just two sound bites. It's that everybody watching could see precisely why those sound bites happened, and that made the tension feel real instead of manufactured. But OTAs and minicamp were just the warm-up. The real test and the real heat was always going to come once pads went on, and the job was actually up for grabs in front of everyone. By the time minicamp rolled around, the story had already shifted from words to actions, and the actions made things worse, not better. Head coach Kevin O'Connell tried to publicly smooth over the McCarthy comment almost immediately, going out of his way to say there wasn't a problem in his building. Coach Kevin O'Connell wasn't bothered by what McCarthy said, telling reporters, "The dialogue between those guys, the interactions have been very professional." That's the company line. But company lines and camera footage don't always match up, and that mismatch is exactly what kept fueling this thing. Because right around the same window, reports started surfacing that Murray wasn't just quietly accepting a fair fight for the job. He was actively working to close the one gap McCarthy still had on him. The QB competition between Murray and McCarthy figured to be the NFL's most intriguing of the offseason, and McCarthy's rapport with the Vikings receiving corps figured to be one of his biggest advantages over the newcomer. Murray didn't sit on that advantage gap. Reports indicated Murray had been working with Minnesota's #2 wideout, Jordan Addison, regularly over a 2-month stretch in Dallas. Well before camp even opened. That's not a guy content to split reps and let the results speak for themselves in August. That's a guy actively dismantling the one edge his competition had left, months before the pads even went on. And it wasn't subtle to people watching from the outside either. Murray may have been closing the gap on McCarthy when it came to relationships with Minnesota's receivers, but it was still viewed as an advantage the incumbent enjoyed. For now, the clock on that advantage was clearly running out, and everybody in that building knew it. Then came minicamp itself, and Murray's own comments about splitting reps landed with extra weight given everything that had already happened. Reporters noted the timing wasn't lost on anyone. Murray expressed that he's working to embrace the part of being uncomfortable in this situation and give himself grace as he learns the offense, though his comments felt somewhat reminiscent of McCarthy's own from a few weeks prior. Same building, same tension, just a different quarterback saying the quiet part slightly louder than the last guy. Even the smaller moments from that stretch kept adding fuel. A viral practice clip showed McCarthy escaping pressure to throw a touchdown during a non-contact session, and the reaction split almost exactly the same way the classroom comment had. Some people ready to crown him, others convinced it meant nothing. A video that garnered over 719,000 impressions on X showed McCarthy escaping pressure in a practice session to throw a touchdown pass, but fans reacted suggesting he could have been brutally sacked if it were an actual NFL game. Even his own highlight plays couldn't escape becoming another referendum on whether he belonged out there at all. There was also the moment his own locker room got involved in a way that added even more pressure. Star receiver Justin Jefferson, the best player on the entire roster, publicly challenged McCarthy directly, telling him to be that dog against Murray. That's not O'Connell's front office diplomacy. That's the best player in the building, in public, telling his young quarterback he needs to bring an edge against the veteran standing across from him, which is about the least subtle way possible to confirm the tension everyone had already picked up on from the footage. By the time training camp actually opened, none of this had cooled off. If anything, the structure of the competition itself guaranteed it would keep boiling. Murray and McCarthy began Vikings training camp, splitting first-team snaps. In a competition O'Connell said would be a fair evaluation for both players, Murray needing to quickly master O'Connell's offense, McCarthy needing to prove he'd moved beyond the mistakes that defined his last season. O'Connell tried to frame the whole thing as an even, professional battle from the top down. "I will say this, and I told the quarterbacks, we don't need to make this 50-50, said O'Connell, explaining that when practices get longer, there are move-the-ball periods where the number of plays each guy gets naturally becomes less predictable, closer to what real football actually looks like. Translation: this isn't going to be a neat, scripted split. Somebody is going to start pulling ahead, and there's no guarantee it happens gradually or gracefully. And on the very first day, the reps did come out close to even, exactly like the front office promised. They got close to the same amount of reps, per ESPN's Kevin Seifert, who reported that on the first day of their training camp quarterback competition, the Vikings were true to their word. Murray and McCarthy rotated evenly during team drills, with 2 sets of 11-on-11 drills. Murray actually got the first crack with the top offense, with no pads yet at Vikings practice. On the first snap of 11-on-11, Murray was quarterbacking the first team offense and hit receiver Jordan Addison about 30 yards down the left sideline. That opening snap mattered symbolically. Even if the team insisted it didn't mean anything about who's actually ahead. It was the guy who'd spent 2 months quietly working out with Addison in Dallas, connecting with him on a deep shot on the very first rep of the very first practice, in front of every camera and every reporter watching for exactly this kind of signal. So heading into the meat of camp, here's where things stood. 2 quarterbacks who'd already shown the public exactly how tense this competition felt through their own words. A receiver core advantage that was rapidly evaporating for the incumbent. The best player on the roster publicly demanding one of them bring more fight. And a head coach insisting it's all professional while admitting the reps themselves wouldn't stay clean and even forever. That's not a story that was going to quiet down. It was a story that was about to hit its most public stage yet. Training camp is where all of this stops being about sound bites and starts being about snaps, sacks, and interceptions in front of a stadium full of fans and every camera the Vikings media policy will allow. And that policy matters, because it's actually shaped how this whole story has traveled. Filming team drills is prohibited per Vikings media policy, which means most of what the public has actually seen has come from press conference clips, sideline snippets, and reporters' own descriptions of what they watched with their notebooks in hand. That's part of why every single interview moment, every classroom line, every toughest part comment has carried so much weight. It's often the only footage people actually get. The stakes on the field, though, are about as clear as they come. The team will use these camp sessions to decide whether Murray or McCarthy will be its starting quarterback for the 2026 season, and which players will make the initial 53-man roster by the end of August. That's not a soft deadline. That's a hard date on the calendar. And one of these 2 men is going to walk out of that stretch with a very different future than the other. Beat writers who've been living in that building all camp have tried to boil the entire competition down to something almost simple, even with everything swirling around it. Of the thousands of pixels and hours of airtime devoted to this quarterback competition during its time at the center of the NFL spotlight, the battle might be cast in relatively simple terms. One former top 10 pick can reboot his career by showing he can learn new things quickly, while the other can reset his time in Minnesota by demonstrating he's mastered the things that gave him trouble last year. Murray, for his part, has tried to publicly frame it as out of his hands entirely, a line that reads very differently once you remember the toughest part comment from just weeks earlier. "It's outside of my control," Murray said. "Whenever I see a 1, his number, or they tell me to go in, I've got to do my job, and that's really my mentality." Outside voices, meanwhile, aren't waiting around for August to render a verdict. Some have already all but called the competition decided before the pads even got fully broken in. According to Ian Rappaport, the competition will reportedly go right up to the start of the season. But some have suggested the motivations for selling a real camp battle, whether saving face after a high draft pick that didn't pan out or trying to drum up trade interest, are painfully obvious. One fantasy outlet went as far as installing Murray as the presumptive Week 1 starter, and pricing McCarthy at long odds to win the job outright. That kind of outside certainty runs directly into everything the footage has actually shown, though, which is a room that doesn't feel settled at all. You don't get a receiver publicly demanding more fight from a quarterback who's already locked into the job. You don't get 2 separate classroom comparisons from a guy who isn't feeling the walls close in. And you don't get a proven veteran telling reporters that split reps are hurting his own development unless he's genuinely worried somebody else might win the room. What's actually unresolved, heading into the rest of camp and the preseason slate, is whether that tension turns into fuel or turns into fracture. McCarthy has motivation nobody can question, a national championship pedigree, a lost rookie year, and a sophomore season that's statistically ranked at the bottom of the entire league, all riding on him proving the doubters wrong in real time. Murray has his own weight to carry, a release starter with 2 Pro Bowls to his name, in a brand new system, at a stage of his career where another failed stop starts becoming its own kind of story. Both of them know the cameras are on. Both of them know every word gets clipped, cut, and sent back out into a fan base that's already decided how it feels about each of them. And both of them, whether they wanted to admit it out loud on camera or not, have shown exactly how much this job means to them. Not through anything scripted, but through the moments, neither one fully controlled. That's what actually went viral. Not a fight, not a shoving match. Two quarterbacks asked simple questions, giving answers that revealed exactly how much pressure they're both under. And a locker room, a coaching staff, and an entire fan base now watching every single snap of camp to see which one of them cracks first, and which one walks out the other side wearing number 1 on the depth chart come September.